Hey, happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of the 28-day challenge. Today's topic is reading labels and basically building a skill somewhat and some general basic knowledge on how to read labels and what to look for, what to look out for is an incredibly important tool for us, for those of us looking to really take control of our own health. Now, the labels can be very confusing, and not everything that's in the product is always on the labels, unfortunately, but we can do the best we can to be as informed as possible. Now, at the end of the day, what we eat is our own personal choice. All we're trying to do is to kind of give you ways to A, find out what's in it, and B, make your own decision as to whether or not those are the types of things you want to tolerate or you want in your body. And again, going to the supermarket and reading labels, very, very important. So let's jump right into it. The first thing is, in a general sense, we'll start with a general sense, and then we'll get into some specific ingredients, what to look for, how to measure them, and whatnot. But let's keep in mind that most of the food that we eat, most of the food that's in the supermarket is advertised, it's packaged. A lot of money goes into that. A lot of research goes into that. The way a product looks, and I'll give you a couple examples, whether it's milk cartons showing caricatures of happy cows on green pastures and farms with, good old Farmer Brown. These are the images that are there for a reason, and it's more often than not quite different than the actual reality, especially when it comes to meat and dairy. A lot of foods are packaged for children, using movies and cartoons and whatnot. They're loaded with toxins and sugars. So first and foremost, just looking at the general packaging and the coloring and some of the statements that are made to try to get you to buy it. These are corporations whose interests are profits and not so much your health. And that is step number one. The other thing to look out for is a lot of the basically meaningless and sometimes misleading claims on a lot of these products. So for example, things like healthy, all natural flavors, heart healthy, or, real fruit juice, like mom used to make. We've been making this product since, 1921. These are meaningless. The fact that somebody might be producing crappy, toxic food for, 100 years isn't a reason to buy it. And things like healthy and natural, they don't have any meaning. There's no classification. There's no requirements to label a food healthy or whatnot. You'll see heart health or only the highest quality. But that's it. These are just tag phrases that are there, and they can sucker us into thinking that we're buying a high quality product just because it says so on the label. That's why we've got to turn to the ingredients and look to see what's in it and what quantities. So first and foremost, our eyes very often go to fat or sugar or whatever we're concerned with most at the time. And that's important. However, I believe the first place we need to look is the ingredients. First of all, how many ingredients are in the food? The more ingredients, the more likely there's chemicals added for whatever reason. But the primary reason for any chemicals added to food is to preserve and extend shelf life. That's the number one thing. Other additives and preservatives might add color, might add flavor, thickness, moistness, whatever. But this food is chemically jacked to achieve a certain texture or a certain purpose or a certain flavor. And none of that is natural to the body, especially in most of the processed foods, which we'll cover tomorrow. So number of ingredients, the fewer ingredients, the better. And the more those ingredients that are of the smaller list that are organic and one-liners, the better. Like, I'll give you an example. One of my favorite pastas is tinkyata pasta. It's a brown rice pasta. The ingredient is organic brown rice. That's it. Another pasta is tolerant pasta. It's based on lentils, red lentils, and the ingredient is organic red lentil powder. That's kind of what you're looking for. Once you get into names of ingredients that you can't pronounce, that you've never heard of, You want to beware. You want to avoid those products as much as possible. Those are the additives. Those are the things. Emulsifiers, binding agents. This is what's added to the food. And they are not good for us. And if that has to be done, like natural food, whole food decays after a certain amount of time. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But that's live food. And that is really what we want to be eating more of. These other chemicalized products. There's not a lot of scientific studies done on them. The ingredients haven't often been approved. A lot of ingredients are labeled as GRAS, generally regarded as safe. Now, that isn't a heck of a endorsement, if you ask me. Generally regarded as safe. By who? The companies. That's who. The companies are allowed to determine what is generally regarded as safe without the intense scrutiny that I think we deserve and protection from the FDA, but that's not the case. So we have to really be careful. Again, a lot of companies get away with not even including ingredients on a package because they claim it's classified. If they put it on the product, that it could, it's a trade secret. Now, whether or not that's true, I being of a cynical mind, I call bullshit on that. So anyway, something to be aware of. The ingredients you can't pronounce, the number of ingredients, and another one. And when we go to the nutritional box, we want to be careful and to look at the number of servings. Number of servings is very important. I have been duped many times to think that something doesn't include a lot of sugar or salt or fat, only to look at the number of servings and say, oh wow, these quantities only apply to one serving, and one serving is a very, very small amount. And I'm going to give you a really good example of this when I talk specifically about sugar in a couple of minutes. So number of servings, make sure you have a good idea of how much is in one serving. So if you're typically going to eat 2 servings of a food, maybe a serving is 1 teaspoon. And you say, oh my God, I didn't realize that I have 3 teaspoons of this. Well, you have to multiply all those numbers on the nutritional labeling by 3. So be very aware. Train your eyes to go to the number of servings. Very, very important. Calories, like we all look to calories. Keep in mind that calories are not an exact measurement of the calories per serving. The FDA allows food companies wide latitude in the accuracy of the calorie numbers that they include. It's up to 20% in either direction. So if something says it's 120 calories per serving, it really could be as high as 140 or as low as 100. I, again, being cynical, would think that companies would tend to underestimate the number of calories in their products because most of us are looking to eat as few calories as possible with as much taste and fun eating as we can, right? So what's the companies, which way would they be leaning? They'd be leaning to show that something actually includes less calories than it does. Again, that's just my opinion and my cynical nature. Forgive me. As a general rule, if things are advertised on TV, I typically don't buy them. I don't eat them. I don't think food needs to be advertised. Food like fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and whole grains, nobody's advertising them. They don't need to be advertised. Nature did its own advertising. It colored them beautiful colors like red and green and blue and purple and yellow and orange. And think about that. The human eye is very different from the eye of a carnivore. We see color, and being able to see color is very important. Why? So that we could pick these fruits and vegetables out when we were hunter-gatherers before the days of paved roads and supermarkets, right? Which is most of human beings' existence. So when we saw that red apple, we were able to distinguish it from the landscape and see that as something advertised to eat. And then, man, when we bit into it and we tasted that delicious sugar and of a fruit, I'm just giving an example of an apple. Wow, that was quite the 1-2 punch to convince us that eating apples was not only good for us but good tasting. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get into some specific things on the label to look for, and let's start with one item that concerns all of us, as it should, is sugar. Now, sugar, like a lot of the ingredients, or most of the ingredients on labels, is measured in grams. Now, I don't know about you, but I typically don't know what a gram is. The only thing I've ever known measured in grams was cocaine. Not that I ever did cocaine, but like that, oddly enough, the addictive nature of sugar and its comparison to cocaine and the studies done is quite compelling. That's a whole nother story. How do we envision what a gram of sugar actually is? We might see, 4 grams, that's low, or wow, 12 grams is high, and and not really know exactly what that looks like. We like to convert those grams into something that is a little easier for us to understand. So one big rule, or one fact, or one way to convert what you see of grams of sugar into teaspoons, I think, is a much better way to envision the amount of sugar in a serving of food. So for every 4 grams of sugar listed on a label, that is equal to 1 teaspoon. So for me, it's very easy to envision a teaspoon of sugar. So again, 4 grams listed on a label is 1 teaspoon. Okay. So now let's tie that in with the number of servings that I want everybody to really start to pay attention to. So to take a Ben & Jerry's ice cream, this is a bit extreme on the sugar front, but 1 pint of, say, Ben & Jerry's fish food ice cream contains, on the label, 32 grams of sugar per serving. Now on the pint, guess what? Guess how many servings per container there are? There are 4 servings per container. Now I have, admittedly in the past, many times eaten a whole pint of Ben & Jerry's. I don't anymore, but I did, and I did it quite a bit. And it is astonishing how much sugar that is. So let's do the math. 32 grams per serving. If I ate the whole thing, that's 32 times 4, which is 128 grams of sugar. Now, if we divide that by 4, right, because it's 4 grams, for every 4 grams is 1 teaspoon, 128 divided by 4 is 32 teaspoons of sugar. So take a big thing of sugar and take 32 teaspoons out of it and put it into that little Ben & Jerry's pint container. That's how much sugar is in there. And now, again, that's not even like, that's refined processed sugar, which jacks our blood sugar levels incredibly high. So that is the importance of knowing what a gram of sugar is, or 4 grams of sugar is, and the serving sizes. So I wanted to point out that example, again, extreme, but unfortunately, it's very common, and even with just the eating of sugary desserts like that, how much sugar is in there. And again, the nutritional value is almost 0. So for all that sugar and all those calories, and then you take in all of the other fat, and cholesterol, and hormones and antibiotics from, yes, I'm picking on dairy. Wow, that's an awful lot in one little pint of ice cream. So very, very important to look for that. So let's get to fat now. The specifics I really want to talk about are sugar, fat, and salt, right? Those are our biggest cravings. Those are our biggest drivers of triggering pleasure in our brain. So let's move on to fat. Now, saturated fat, there's different kinds of fat. Fat, if we're trying to lose weight, we want to be reducing the fat in anything we eat as much as possible. All animal products, meat, dairy, fish, eggs, pork, chicken, are going to include a high amount of fat, and with that fat comes cholesterol. Now, the cholesterol is important. When you see cholesterol and you see next to it, if you see cholesterol, it's an animal product. Why do I say that? Plants and vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, they don't make cholesterol. Cholesterol is made by a liver, and a liver only. Our bodies, the human body, makes all of the cholesterol that we need, and we do need cholesterol, but we don't need any from external sources. So when you see cholesterol on a package, it's food derived from an animal, because animals have livers and they produce cholesterol, and the percentage of recommended daily allowance is a maximum number, not a minimum. So don't read cholesterol and say, this is 30% of the RDA, recommended daily allowance. That's good. That's not good. That's bad. The more cholesterol, the worse. 200 milligrams is the maximum recommended amount to eat cholesterol. So it's not a minimum, it's not a required amount. You don't require any cholesterol externally. So keep that in mind. We don't want to be eating extra cholesterol. Heart disease and the statin, cholesterol reducing prescription drug market has just exploded, almost hand in hand with coronary heart disease, caused in large part by fat and cholesterol in our blood, and that's sticking to the walls of our arteries, impairing blood flow to the heart. So we don't need any of that cholesterol at all. So you can get healthy fats from lots of nuts and seeds, avocados, chia seeds and flax seeds, tons of great healthy fats. We don't need it from external sources. So please look out for that, for cholesterol in particular, and the saturated fat that comes with animal products. And that's going to also come in the form of a lot of oils. Oil is all fat, right? So all the calories from oil, basically for every gram of fat is equal to 9 calories, which is a lot, which is high. That's double carbs and proteins. And oil is all fat, so keep that in mind. Even your lovely extra virgin olive oil, imported from the remote islands of Greece or Italy, it's still fat, and it may be a healthier type of fat than the trans fats and the hydrogenated oils. Great, but it's still fat, and it's going to get stored as fat, and it's going to be very, very high in calories. So we want to be keeping our fat intake to a minimum. I believe, in your diet, I personally follow 70% carbs, 20% protein, 10% fat. Those fats ideally coming from healthy fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and some grains. So keep that in mind. These oils and whatnot are high in fat, and they're going to get stored as fat. Okay, again, a lot of that, what I just said, is going to get covered in depth as we go on in the challenge. We're going to talk about fats, we're going to talk about carbs, we're going to talk about all of it. So stay tuned for that. Let's move on. A couple more things I want to point out. We talked about fat, we talked about sugar. Let's talk about salt. A lot of us have cravings for sugar. A lot of us have cravings for salt. A lot of us have cravings for both. So, sodium. Most Americans eat way, way more sodium than we should be. The recommended amount is anywhere from 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams. And 2,300 milligrams of sodium salt is about a teaspoon. That's not a lot in absolute quantity, especially when we look at what we just talked about with sugar. But we don't need more than that. I actually believe we need far less than that. And the sodium that we're getting is usually refined, bleached table salt, which is not the same thing as naturally occurring sea salt, pink salt, which includes over 80 incredibly useful, beneficial minerals. Those are stripped out in all table salt, and in most of the salt that you're going to see in the packaging. So when you see sodium, that's not sea salt, pink salt, unless it says so on the label. And thankfully, sea salt and pink salt is becoming much more widely used, and we applaud that. So be careful with the salt intake. When you're going to eat, if you eat processed meats, we believe that one of the worst foods on the planet, if not the worst foods on the planet, processed meats contain an incredible amount of sodium. Sometimes 700 milligrams, 500 to 700 milligrams per serving. And again, those serving sizes are never as big as you think they are. And we're more often than not eating multiple servings as it's described and laid out in the packaging. So very, very much want to watch out for the sodium. With a lot of processed foods, especially processed meats, you get sodium nitrates. These are believed to be cancer-causing compounds, and they're used in meats to preserve the meat from decaying. Now, when we're going to eat animal foods, that is the flesh of an animal that, if left to its own devices, would decay. It would turn gray, it would smell, and bacteria would start to break it down. These preservatives need to be added, in particular sodium nitrates and nitrites, they're called. They're added for a number of reasons: to delay that decaying process, so preventing the bacteria that breaks down meat naturally, which is another word of saying rotting, from happening. It also provides color, because the color of decaying flesh, animal flesh, is not this bright pink color. It's actually gray. So it adds flavor, it prevents decay, and it gives it that pink color. None of that stuff is good for us. So the specific foods I'm talking about that, and I'm bringing up and I'm picking on processed meats, because they really check all the boxes of what to look out for. The cholesterol, because they're going to be high in cholesterol. The sodium, there's going to be tons of that, and these sodium nitrates and these colorings that are in there, and saturated fat. I'm talking about foods like ham and hot dogs, any kind of lunch meat and cold cuts, corned beef, beef jerky, these cured pepperonis, and you know how salty they are. You know how much water you want to chug when you're done eating them. Bacon. This stuff is lots of fat, lots of salt, man, and it's heavy duty. It's really, really, really damaging on so many fronts. So look out for that on the labels. Talked a little bit about trans fats, hydrogenated oils. Want to avoid them at all cost. They are very difficult to digest. They raise bad cholesterol. They lower good cholesterol. Leading suspect in thousands of premature heart attacks each year. Luckily, they're being more and more phased out, but they still exist, so be careful. Look out at a lot of these corn oils and canola oils, and really, really want to use oil as sparsely as possible. And if so, we do want to make it high quality organic seed oil, and again, using it to as little as possible. Last thing I want to talk about, and we can go on and on, is artificial sweeteners. Look out for these on the labels. I'm talking about sucralose, I'm talking about aspartame, saccharin. I'm going to include, when I'm done, a list that you can go look at. I'm going to send you put two links in. One is all of the different names that are used for sugar, the scientific names. They're all sugar. Look out for high fructose corn syrup. Again, we'll talk about that specifically more as we go. These are the things you want to look out for. These are processed, man-made, jacked sweeteners that create absolute havoc on our guts. And we've talked about the importance of the gut, and we're going to talk about that way more in the next 25 days. But I'm going to send you the list of the ingredients to look out for, so you have them. You can print them out, and you can keep them with you. But that's it for our label reading. So the challenge is going to be for today to really just start practicing reading these labels, looking out for specific ingredients. If you're unsure if an ingredient is healthy or not, or what it's used for, that's what this group is for. Ask us. We keep an extensive list on ingredients, and it's an ever-building list, because so many more keep coming to market. And just become more aware of the quantities of sugar, fat, and salt that you're eating every day by reading these labels. And what this will allow you to do is to look for healthier substitutes. So if you like crackers and you don't like your Ritz crackers, you don't like the ingredients, you don't like the number of servings, you don't like the amount of salt, fat, or sugar, then look for others, that have much less, that are advertised as organic, that have fewer ingredients, that are non-GMO. Really, GMOs are, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow on processed foods, the genetically modified grains are, I believe, wreaking havoc. The gluten craze, I believe, is more of a glyphosate, herbicide, pesticide problem that's been, and now being found in much of the processed foods that we eat, including cereals that we feed to our kids. So again, we'll get more into that, but we want to start looking for these things, fewer ingredients, non-GMO, and substituting out, crowding out the bad things in our pantry for much healthier alternatives. And there, thankfully, are a lot more out there coming to market all the time. And then lastly, substituting in more foods that don't have any labels at all, that don't require a label. And you know what section I'm talking about. I'm talking about the produce section. Getting more of those live, high water content foods into our bodies, those delicious colors. They advertise themselves. Naturally, by nature, developed over thousands of years, perfectly beautiful live foods that contain every nourishing ingredient that our bodies needs to thrive, is found in the produce section. So let's add more of the non-label necessary foods, as organic and clean and local as possible, and enjoy as much of those as possible, and just in general crowding out all of these foods that require labels and advertising and all the other nonsense. What a great way to short circuit all of that nonsense by just eating more of what's in the produce section. So that's it for today, guys. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. We are going to work this weekend, so we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's topic is going to be processed foods. It's going to be packed again with a lot of information. So I know it's a lot. I hope you got your notebooks. Any questions, thoughts, victories, successes, setbacks, whatever. This is the group to share it in. So hope to hear from everybody. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be back tomorrow with another clip. Alrighty.